All right. Hi, everyone. This is Curt Varone.
And coming to you from a hotel somewhere in Long Island is Brad Pinsky. I feel like we just switched the
Yep.
roles. You were in
We,
a hotel, I'm in a
uh,
hotel. Everybody should understand this is the life of Curt and Brad. So I apologize to everybody for crappy video and crappy audio on my part. And
well, I'm home. I'm home, but I was up all night on the red eye, so I'm exhausted. I'm dragging bottom here, but at least we got it done. And boy, we've got an incredible week. But let me just get the date out there. It
crazy
is
week.
March 17th of 2025. I don't think we've ever had a week of this many you can't make this stuff up topics. But and some of them, I was staying at a friend's house in Park City, and so we were sharing some of the things. What are you going to blog about? And one of them's actually from Utah, and the
You
whole
would believe us if you
the whole
told me.
family is aghast. Like what? What? So
And I just want to say, we are not making any of this shit up.
we don't have the creativity. We couldn't if we
Oh my
wanted to,
God.
but
I tried to find a Trump mask for this first case, but I couldn't find one in time. So, okay, well, Curt, if you're ready to start,
yep.
then let's go to
Let's
Illinois, where we have firefighters. And I get it. I'm not picking on the municipality, but we have
no.
we have I think five or so firefighters who took a photo posing in Trump masks after the inauguration. It was on Inauguration Day, January 20th, 2025. It was circulated on social media, and all they said in the comment is our fire department, which they probably shouldn't have said, but our
They
fire
probably shouldn't have
department
said it.
all celebrating the inauguration and matching Trump masks.
Yeah. When
And
I first heard about it, I wasn't sure because my brain starts looking at discipline, and you've got to have a rule that's been violated. And I'm saying, well, is it a social media rule? Is it a digital imagery rule that was violated? And here, it was the right way to approach it. They approached it from um, engaging in political activities while on duty. So,
and here's what gets me. So when I was chief, I had and Trump was president in this first term. I had a member put a Trump sticker on his helmet, and we did not prohibit all stickers. Now, that's a critical point in this.
yeah.
But I had a firefighter complain, oh, he has a Trump sticker on his helmet. It should come off. And I said, hey, we have no anti-sticker policy. So you can have your piss on Chevy, piss on whatever, piss on Irish, piss on Italian, whatever you want, your Calvin and Hobbes on. I said, I'm not going to discipline somebody for putting a non-political sticker, which just says Trump. I said, that is the president of the United States. Whether you agree or not, you cannot discipline somebody for putting the president of the United States on your helmet. So here's where I have the issue. I agree with you. And let's debate this if we can,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
Because we
Yeah,
can take both sides.
yeah.
But I agree that it is a political statement, but I don't know that it is. It's Inauguration Day. This is our new president, whether you like him or hate him.
Yeah.
It's our new president. How do
Yeah.
you not celebrate a new president, like or hate?
I
And
don't know how we have this discussion without getting into politics, though. And I really, I hate the discussion of politics because then people get polarized, especially today.
that happened.
And I think there's reasons why perhaps they shouldn't have been disciplined. There's reasons why perhaps they should. And I was sort of not upset, but I was reading through some of the anti-Trump hate postings uh, about the firefighters, and underneath some of the local news articles and some of the national news articles about the story, the never Trumpers, the anti whatever you want to call them, Trump derangement syndrome, whatever. But they have been convinced that he is like one step short of Adolf Hitler, and I get it. And also a lot of the minority community and particularly immigrant community, legal or illegal, but they're concerned about some of his policies. And in their mindset, anyway, their mindset is that he's evil, he's bad. And So I don't know if you just declare pick an object, pick an object. Let's say a rock that are and we just keep saying a rock is bad, a rock is bad, a rock is bad, and then all of a sudden it becomes a symbol of something bad. I don't know. I don't know.
But
You're
sir, he's
absolutely
the
right. He's the
president of the
president of
United
the United
States.
States.
Right.
So
So I would take a different view of this.
yeah,
If this because the department, rightly so, had a no
mhm,
politics, right?
yeah,
No politics
and that was a
policy.
good thing to have in their policies.
It is. And New York
Yeah.
State has a no,
Mhm,
for example, and
mhm,
very few other states have a no politics law. You
mm.
cannot, in a municipal building or municipal employment, engage in political, right? But here's the difference.
Well,
This is not politics.
right. That's right. That's right. And every government building I have been in, just about, has a picture of the mayor on the wall, sometimes the mayor and the council on the wall.
And
And
the president,
you got the president of the United, so you can't have a picture of the president of the United States because some people disagree with him. I don't know. I don't know. We're not in a good we're not in a good frame of mind here when it comes to objectivity about this.
right.
But
And what's incredible is the IAFC, and I applaud them for their diplomacy to the public. They
Mhm,
come out with an amazing statement, right?
mhm,
And it's basically to say, we are coming for you whether we agree with you or not. We're going to
mhm.
be there for you in your worst day, which is almost verbatim what they said,
That you're
but
talking about
whether
the
we
local,
agree
the
with you or not.
IAFF local.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
yeah, yeah,
the IFF nailed it.
right.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Except that I hate that you felt you had to apologize. I don't care whether it's Biden, Clinton, Obama, or anybody else. He's
Yeah.
now the president. He's not running for president.
Yeah.
He's the president.
Yeah. You know, if it's there's symbolism, I think in some respects there's genuine fear. Uh, and whether it's the product of a biased media, fomenting that fear, and spinning of things that could be looked at objectively one of two ways. But there is that fear in certain communities, an association of Trump with some really negative, negative
But
senses, and
right.
I,
But it
I don't
doesn't
know.
matter. He's the president. It's not
I,
I look at the law, not the emotion, right?
I,
The law is he is
mhm.
the president of the United States and he's getting inaugurated. It is not a political statement to
Oh.
support the president of the United States.
Well, perhaps they'll reach out to you, the firefighters, and file a First Amendment lawsuit. I'm assuming that that's the direction you would go to challenge this.
I would
Um,
have the
yeah.
IFC took a
Well,
much higher, right? The local took a
the
much
IAFF, you
higher
keep saying
road.
IAFC, and you're showing your bias here,
I'm
right?
sorry. I not IFC,
IAFF.
IFF local. God, it's okay. So anyone who doesn't know, it's 9 o'clock at night as we're doing this. So I've
And Brad
blown
just
on a
got out of a
plane all
very, very
today.
difficult meeting, and he's going to be in court tomorrow. So,
Oh God, on a
yeah,
huge case.
yeah,
But no, IFF local. Apologize, IFC.
yeah,
But again, this is non-political.
yeah.
Supporting your president when they're not running for office is not a political. If it said Trump 2025
Mhm.
on their masks, different issue.
Well, there's certain symbolism, right?
But
There's certain symbolism out there that a swastika, let's just use that as an example, or
okay,
a noose, or other symbolism,
hate symbols.
that shouldn't be it shouldn't be present in the workplace. Okay, it's not that it's political, but it's just that we know that it's offensive to certain groups. I It seems to me that these groups have also now come to associate the President of the United States in the same negativity at which they hold for those other symbolisms. And so now, can you have the picture of the mayor on the wall? Can you have the picture of the city council on, which, by the way, I think is a really good thing because I was actually I had to do a little investigation, but we had a person who made an inappropriate comment in front of a city council person because they didn't recognize him because the firefighter didn't live in that community, but they worked in that community. And I'm saying, maybe the idea of having the mayor's picture and the council on the wall that everybody can see every day so you can recognize them so you don't do something incredible or say something incredibly stupid. I mean, it'd be nice if you just didn't say anything incredibly stupid, but at least if you could see who's like standing behind you at an incident scene and you don't say something stupid. But at any rate, having the president's picture on the wall could be offensive to certain groups. And you're right. And to that extent, I agree with you. But I don't know. It was a political statement, I think. And
I see. I
if
disagree.
they,
I don't think it's
yeah,
politics. I think if
mm,
it had been Trump 2025, Trump for president, that's clearly. But Inauguration Day is a celebration because it is. It's a celebration of the new president. Every
well,
single president back to I don't know when has had
yeah,
them.
Abe Lincoln put the Abe Lincoln hat on, the beard. Yeah. Uh,
Pick one,
I don't
and
know
then
if the guys had called me and said, "Hey, Chief, this is what we're thinking about doing. Do you think it'll be okay?" I would say, "Yeah, probably not a good idea."
I would as well. I agree with you. I would as well. But unconstitutional,
Yeah.
illegal, warranting disciplinary action, celebrating the president of the United States,
Yeah.
because that's all they're guilty of is celebrating it. It's not politics, in my opinion. I validate the policy.
Yeah.
There should be no politics in the fire department, no
Mhm.
campaigning, no posters, no comments, no speech, nothing.
Mhm.
But when they're president, it is no longer politics as far as I am concerned.
Yeah. Interesting perspective.
So,
So.
so it would be nice if and by the way, I want to tell the readers, Curt and I are not doing you justice. You need to go read Curt's quotes of the engagement between the public and the IAFF local.
Mm,
Because one, the IAFF does a bang up job of it,
yeah, I think
but
so.
not to be tolerated. Right, most of the public, from what I see, came against them, except for one or two posts. You need to read the posts to see how crazy this got. And you would think the week would end there, but yet it doesn't. So let's go to Utah and Curt.
Oh my, you want me to? Yeah, I got a little
Please,
bit. Oh
please
my
do
God.
this. Don't let me
Well,
have.
there's a lot that I don't know about. Okay. So there's a lot of speculation. I was in Utah last week when some of this story broke, but we've got a fire chief, that much we know. And apparently, he had some inappropriate pictures and some inappropriate things going on in his life. Okay. He gets called before a judge. Now, what's unclear is whether or not he knew the judge or had a relationship with the judge and what exactly that relationship was at that time. That's not clear. But he goes before the judge earlier this year to be arraigned, I guess. He had been arrested and now is brought there. And the prosecutor, again, some of the language in the news media wasn't as precise as we'd like. So, but it appears that someone advocated for him not to be released into the community, and the judge released him into the community over. And it wasn't clear if it was the prosecution, the police, or family members of the victims or whatever. But the judge released him into the community. Now, 2 months later, it's now March. He and the judge are, I guess, recharged. And apparently they had been having communications back and forth. There's allegations of some sort of a relationship between them. I don't know if the relationship, I hope this is kind of crazy. I hope the relationship goes back to January, okay? Because here's the problem if they had no relationship prior to Jan. I don't know if you thought about this.
Oh yeah.
Okay, the problem is that this guy who is exploiting underage girls, okay,
Girls.
he's exploiting and has nude pictures of underage girls, comes before the judge. And if they don't have a relationship already, they very quickly developed one.
Yeah, over a really disgusting bond.
You know what I'm saying? And then apparently there was communication back and forth about who likes what and who's going to do what to who. And somehow that, the police were able to, put two and two together, and now they're both facing charges. So,
It is going to be very interesting to see how the two are tied together in this disgusting, right? I mean,
I
he's
just,
charged. The judge lets him off.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I don't know.
yeah.
Or you know what? Maybe they got it all wrong. Okay, maybe they got it all wrong, and maybe they're presumed to be innocent. Give them that. But again, I think there's a factual question. Did they have a relationship before? In which case, the judge should have recused himself.
Correct.
And or did the judge say, "Hey, remember me? You were before me a couple of days ago.
Yeah, we have a common interest.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. I
No.
mean, so I don't know. We don't know what it is other than the fact that they've both been charged now. The chief did go before the judge. That much is factually clear. The judge did allow him out on bond, and now they're both involved. And there was some sort of an internet app that was, I think, instrumental in helping, put two and two together here.
The chance of
So.
this being true is zero, and yet it may very well be true. Judge and firefighter. Jesus. Anyway, so look, and to everyone, as you know, Curt and I have no inside knowledge. We read the
No.
same things you guys can read. We don't know. We're victims of the press and what they say. It's one thing when we interpret court cases for our viewers. It's another thing when you're just trying to interpret media, and you can't make this stuff up. I mean,
No,
if it's
especially,
true,
I mean, Utah's a very religious
yeah,
state.
you can't have
And
chocolate,
this
sex,
is
anything.
this is yeah, I don't know. This is very strange. Very
It
strange.
is, but let's not end the strange there. So, and I don't know if this is strange, but it's definitely you can't make this stuff up moment. So we're gonna go to Los Angeles.
But the pic, I didn't get graphic with the picture that we're talking about here, but that's
Thank you
pretty
for that, by
strange.
the way.
That's made, but anyway,
I'm
go
sure the
ahead.
viewers are like, please, please both. Now, okay, so back to Los Angeles.
Yeah, you've got to read
have,
the lawsuit. We're not gonna
oh,
mention the picture, but
oh God, no, and you want to, but it's anyway. So it's like smelling something bad. You know it smells bad, but you still want to smell it anyway, just to make it's a bad idea. Anyway, so now we're in Los Angeles. We have a suit by a firefighter against the city and one of the city's fire captains. The captain allegedly, this is just a lawsuit, so everything's alleged. The fire captain allegedly sent out in recently picture number, let's call it 2. He sends out an inappropriate picture. Now, I don't know why someone does that. Right?
there's a lot of it going on from what I understand. But
Oh my God.
yeah,
But apparently this is the second time. Now, I kind of read this like it's the second time in 3 years, right?
second,
So
that was this, earlier incident. Was the earlier incident? I don't know if it included. No, it didn't include a picture, did it? The
I
first
don't think
incident.
so. There was just they just refer to it as another
Yeah.
inappropriate,
Yeah.
sexual
Yeah. There was another
conduct.
thing that happened. Yeah.
But and look, I'm not excusing this 2 over in a 3-4 year period.
Mhm.
That's too much for a captain, right? If it was okay, just Joe firefighter said something bad, but this is your
Mhm.
basic bread and butter retaliation suit. The firefighter complains about the captain. Now the captain should have apologized, whatever, but instead, and apparently there's a policy that says, don't talk about this, right? He reports it, the firefighter reports it, and the plaintiff, the lawsuit reports it to the fire chief. And all of a sudden, the firefighter is getting retaliated against, allegedly,
Allegedly.
right, by the cohorts of the fire captain for making the complaint.
Which is not uncommon, by
Oh
the
my
way.
God, this is like
Yeah.
every day in Curt and Brad's life,
Yeah.
right? This is very common.
Well, they're mad at somebody for ratting a brother out.
And here's the thing, right? And I think you and I have to speak. We speak as lawyers a lot, but speaking
Mhm.
as fire chiefs, what we have to say is when you do something that puts somebody in the position to have to report you,
Mhm.
you did that. They didn't. Kudos to them for doing their duty. You
Mhm.
allegedly did do your duty by putting them in that position. It's like, and I've said to this, and I stole this line, but I had to discipline a good friend. And I said to him, I said, you know what? I always considered you a good friend. And he's like, I am. I said, you're not, because I'm your chief
Yeah,
and you put me in the position of having to discipline you. I didn't
exactly.
do that to you. You did that.
right.
And that's what this is.
Yes.
Somebody is trying to be one of the gang. And I will share one thing. Every officer, if you go to company leadership training or line officer leadership training, here's my first piece of advice. You are no longer friends with anybody. No friends whatsoever. No soup for you. And why is that? You cannot be a leader and be friends with your followers who will be willing to take advantage of you and push you to your limits to the point where you either have to discipline them or ignore them. And as a lawyer, I want to say to everybody, when you take a leadership position, you tell them, we are no longer friends. You don't tell me jokes. I don't tell you inappropriate jokes. We don't make inappropriate comments. We don't point at that hot man or woman. We don't do any of that any longer. We are no longer friends. I am your boss, and you will treat me as such. That's just my advice.
Yeah, it's not bad advice, but it's tough. I know in career departments it's tough because there is a social bonding that takes place, and there's a sense that we protect each other. Sometimes we have to protect each other from the city, the way the city's been treating us, and it's difficult. It's very difficult. And the people who do report on others do tend to be retaliated against, and it shouldn't be happening. I think there's some training issues there that officers, and it looks like here right on through the organization, not just at the captain level, but even up, have got to be more, how do you say, offensive when it comes to, not defensive, but proactive when it comes to dealing with potential retaliation. And I've seen too many in person and through clients, just too many situations where instead of officers stepping in and say, knock it off, guys. He made the complaint, let it go, let the system take care of it. Don't take things into your own. But that conversation doesn't happen. And that I think is a leadership failure. It's a lack of understanding of the officer's role. And I understand where you're coming from on certainly, especially you were the chief of your department, and certainly that puts you in a different situation. But I think at the company level, there's still that camaraderie, there's still the association that folks have. But when it comes to retaliation, the company officers are the front line. And when you see firefighter A preparing to retaliate or retaliating against firefighter B, who's firefighter B's made the complaint, you have to intervene. You can't ignore it. And what's worse, you can't be the person that is doing the retaliating, because once an officer retaliates, it's
Done.
over. It's over.
Yeah.
So
But
this,
here's the problem.
my well,
I want to put here.
my size up on this case is there's not enough there, even though that one picture was offensive. There's not enough there to constitute sexual harassment. I don't see it.
But
Okay. But
retaliation
retaliation, he is going to, a first year law student, first semester, first year law
could
student
win
is
that
going to
case.
win this case. This
Right.
is a no-brainer, and the sad thing is you're going to lose on sexual harassment, but it doesn't matter when it comes to retaliation.
And listen, I don't agree with what happened, but I do
Mhm.
understand it. And I'm going to go to your science, right? We've got
Mhm.
Curt, the law guy, and Curt, the
Yeah.
science guy. And let me go
Yeah.
to Curt, the science guy, for a moment,
Mhm.
because there is my background, sociology, organizational behavior, group dynamics. That was my college background. And which I never thought would play so well to the fire service, but it is
Go
exactly
figure.
the fire service.
Go figure.
Yeah. But here's the thing. So when you break down, what is the most important thing in teamwork? Trust, right?
Mhm.
Trust.
Yeah.
I trust that you have my back. I
Mhm.
trust that I have your back, and you know that. So
Mhm.
you're willing to go in. I got you, right? I'm the second man on the hose. I'm gonna vent the window when you tell me to. I'm the RIT team. I'm gonna come for you, whatever it is. So the problem in the fire service is when we break down trust, there is met with fury.
Yeah.
And trust is so important in the fire service.
And
So the moment, it's not what the captain did. When
mhm.
the firefighter reports the captain, so
Right.
that we've broken the trust in this group, this cohesive attack the fire frontline group. Like you said, we are right. It's different being chief than lieutenant captain,
Yeah.
because lieutenant captains are inside, and you break that trust,
Yeah.
and it's over. And that's what happens when you report somebody. But please, nobody say, "Oh, Brad said you shouldn't report people." The captain should never have put everybody in the position so that they're forced to make a decision that they probably never wanted to make.
Yeah. I when it comes to misconduct, we've got to have each other's back. Absolutely, positively, no question, we got to have each other's back. But there has to be a line beyond which I don't have your back. I can't. You can't expect me. It's not realistic for you to expect me to have your back. The problem is these things are never, they're not in writing. They're not talked about in the firehouse.
It's
All
so
that's talked
critical.
about in the firehouse is I got your back. And this is actually the origins of professional standards, which is, what I teach, goes back to the Rodney King incident and the fact that law enforcement struggle with this as well, that they have to have each other's back and they have to have each other. Absolutely, they have to have each other's back. But how far does that mean I'm going to look the other way if you rip off a drug dealer? I'm going to look the other way on a bad shoot, you
Not
know,
or when I put my
right?
knee on your neck, not when there's body
Right. And
cameras.
and they struggle with that. Just like we struggle with it. They struggle with it. And professional standards develop out of that context that we've got to have each other's back, but there has to be a limit. And once you cross that line, it's certainly, I think, when you read what the captain did, you'd be, all right, man, that was over the line. That's over the line. And now, but everybody's got a different line.
Right.
So, but again, just to kind of, orient everybody, the sexual harassment, I don't think in this, there were several instances of sexually harassing behavior that could have been disciplined, but I don't see this as, if I'm the judge, I don't think there's enough there to be sexual harassment. However,
Retaliation.
once someone files a complaint and thereafter there is an adverse employment action against the complainer, you've got a slam dunk case of retaliation and he's going to win.
And I
So,
still say, and look, I get it. So let's assume there's 3 people plus the captain. We've been a shift, or 2 in the captain. We've been a shift forever. We're cohesive. We make these lewd jokes all the time, right? We make obnoxious, obscene, offensive. I don't care whether it's men, women, gay, straight. It doesn't matter who's involved, right? We just make it and everyone's comfortable with it. At least so the captain thinks. And then a new person comes in. I'm not saying this is what happened
yeah.
here, but a new person comes in. We want to indoctrinate them. We want to welcome them into the group. We like them. And now we start sending the same lewd, obnoxious, inappropriate emails. The answer is it doesn't belong in the firehouse. You can
That's
make
right.
jokes about anything else, not sexual jokes. Enough. The law isn't going to tolerate it anymore. Anyway, okay. I think the science behind this is incredible.
Yeah.
But the law ends it. Retaliation, you nailed
Yeah.
it. It's not going to survive. You cannot retaliate against somebody. Captain, if you're watching, suck it up. You apologize. And every other captain who oversteps the line, I'm sure everybody else has, you apologize for what you did and you end it and you set the example and you keep the trust in your group.
And get the retaliation a stop.
Oh, or
Okay.
don't do
Yeah.
it. Forget the
You know,
retaliation. Don't encourage it. Don't allow it. You
when
lose.
you retaliate against somebody who's filed a complaint, you are giving him or her a blank check by the city. And if you're upset with them for reporting it, why are you giving them a blank check? You're basically giving them, the city's going to have to put several zeros after whatever number the jury says. So why?
You and I are the lessons of hard learning, right? We are going to tell you, you may like what you did, but here's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Learn now. I hope people are, I'm going to play this at our conference for, you can't make this stuff up. This is the right thing. You can't do this. Don't do it. So I'm probably going to be standing below the video of us saying, don't do this. But anyway, don't do this.
Don't do that.
Okay. I hope we've beaten that up enough. Let's go to the FDNY, NYPD. This is listen, I want everyone to understand a term before I get into this case. This is such a good case. I'm so glad you picked this. This is law school, not 101. This is like 301, to be fair. But there's a phrase, burden of proof. It means what the person suing you has to prove in order to win. And if they don't meet their burden, they lose. The facts are very simple. The law, not so simple. So we have a lawsuit where the FDNY and the NYPD were sued because allegedly, and I think this part's more directed at the FDNY EMS, they allegedly didn't come to the aid of a shooting victim. So a federal court has now dismissed this suit. So a woman was shot by her boyfriend in May of 22 in Queens, which is about where I'm sitting now, about 100 feet that way. So I'm right here. In any event,
Lock the door. Lock the door in your hotel room.
Yeah, well, hopefully nobody comes and finds me. But if anyone is, I'm in suite 101. Anyway, okay. So, but they sued the estate administrator. The estate represents a dead victim, basically. Anyway, and it's usually the family. But they sued, saying that her Fourth Amendment, Eighth Amendment, and 14th Amendment rights have been violated, as well as a bunch of state law claims, because they claim that the FDNY, I'm guessing EMS, failed to provide the deceased with adequate medical care because they didn't rush in. And they claim that had you rushed in quicker, then the wounds would have been survivable. Now, I didn't see, I'm going to kind of 180 this, I didn't see whether the state law claims involved, basic negligence claims, but this was a discretionary safety thing. They never would have won on those, right? It's discretionary whether you rush in. They were probably told to stage. We've all been on these calls. Everybody listening has been on this call, but they focus on the constitutional route and do so in federal court. So this is what we're going to learn about burden of proof. This is why this case is so great for the scholars out there, and I hope you all become the scholars. So first they said the Fourth Amendment. Now everyone knows Fourth Amendment is the right to be free of unreasonable, unlawful search and seizure, all right, in your property, your person, your house, etc. So they claim that the FDNY, I don't understand this.
I don't either. I don't know if it was a pleading error or the judge somehow misunderstood it. Or
I don't understand it.
I don't see the Fourth Amendment here. Fourth Amendment means you got to get a search warrant before you come into somebody's house.
But we have exigent circumstances.
Yeah. So I don't know.
Anyway, they claim they unlawfully seized the property. This one makes no sense, so we should quickly dispose of it as the
well,
court
maybe their attorney can write a comment in either on YouTube or on our blog and reorient our thinking, because I'm not seeing, I was thinking the same thing. I am not seeing a Fourth Amendment issue here. The Fourth Amendment doesn't mandate that you go in. It mandates you stay out.
Right. That's what makes no sense. And at any rate, so maybe, I don't know, and I'm not picking on the attorney. We want to understand your thoughts here, but I would never lead with a weak claim, or I would never include a weak claim. It makes your whole case look weak. In any event, then we do have more substantive ones, right? Which, this is all a bad lawsuit, don't get me wrong, but we have a 14th Amendment claim. Now, the 14th Amendment, just so everyone understands, takes the federal constitutional claim that applies to every state. Almost, everybody stay tuned to this comment, almost all of the amendments, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, eighth, skipping the seventh, apply to the states. We'll find out whether, this is my case, whether the Seventh Amendment of the U.S. Constitution applies to the states. In any event, different topic. But the 14th Amendment is what applies under one of two tests, applies the federal constitutional provisions to the state. And what they said is, and there's two ways it gets applied. One is called the Privileges and Immunities Clause, meaning you deprived us of your privileges and immunities. Think the Second Amendment. I have the privilege of carrying a concealed firearm without excuse, or without having to prove a defensive need, right? That was the New York case, McDonald. But that's not this. This is, you deprived me of my life, liberty, or property without due process. I don't understand this as kind of the reverse. Because you didn't rush in fast enough, you deprived me of my life, right? And the judge says no. The judge throws that out, says there's no due process violation, and goes through a bunch of reasons, including the Fourth Amendment search and seizure, saying that again doesn't apply.
Again,
But
I'm not getting it. Are we supposed to have a magistrate available immediately to allow somebody a fair hearing before we don't go in or before we stage or whatever? Again, I'm not seeing the the 14th Amendment issue here
yeah,
either. So
the specific allegation was that there was a deliberate indifference on the part of the FDNY EMS
yeah.
to the medical needs of the patient.
Mhm.
And I just don't see that. Life first, right? Until the police went in. There's no question that the police went in. By the
Mhm.
way, same defendant, City of New York. You can
Mhm.
try to break out FDNY and NYPD. It's still the City of New York. So they may be their agencies, but when the NYPD rushes in, unquestionably did here, if the FDNY is staging outside, that's what they're instructed to do. The City of New York is still responding in. Anyway, that was crazy.
Right.
Eighth Amendment, um, cruel and unusual punishment. This is my favorite one. I
Feel like
thought this was a
I don't know if you have a surf cast. You have a surf cast, like, and really kind of like throwing the line out there, trying to get it out 100 yards. This is like surf casting out in the ocean. Like,
So the Eighth Amendment only, and the court says this, only focuses, like, think death penalty, right? The way you kill somebody is a Eighth Amendment issue. It's
they got to
cruel
be a
and unusual
prisoner. They
punishment.
got to be a convicted prisoner for the Eighth Amendment to apply.
Yeah, crazy. And then Monell, I disagree
Yeah.
with the court here. I just want to say this. So everyone understands what Monell liability is that a municipality, I've won a case on this,
Mhm.
is that a municipality has a written or a written rule or an unwritten but constant practice such
Mhm.
that it is the policy, right? So basically,
Mhm.
Monell says a municipality has a policy that results in a violation of your civil rights.
Mhm.
And here they had to show that that policy was a government custom that intended or had the known effect of breaching someone's constitutional rights.
Right.
And the court correctly says there can't be Monell liability unless the plaintiff shows that she's been the victim of a federal law
Mhm.
violation.
Right.
And I don't see that here.
Well,
What is the policy?
I
Stage
think
outside?
no, I think the judge defeated the Monell claim up above in terms of the two 14th
Fourth and eighth,
Amendment claims. So if the
right?
judge had found that there's a colorable 14th Amendment either due process or equal protection claim, then that would have been the basis for the Monell liability. But the court said we're not seeing a 14th Amendment due process. We're not seeing a 14th Amendment equal protection. You don't have a Monell claim without one of those two.
And the weird, I get to the same conclusion, but I would have taken a slightly different approach to say there was a policy. I would have acknowledged the policy. The policy is police go in, EMS stays
Yeah,
outside.
but the policy alone isn't enough. There has to be
Correct.
a constitutional violation.
Agreed.
Yeah,
That's the only slight difference I would have taken with the
yeah,
court.
yeah. And
Um,
yeah, I don't see I think it's a tragedy that the woman died. I'm assuming she bled to death, and if the medics could have got in there quicker and applied a tourniquet or done whatever, they could have done. But
but
you
this
know,
is important. So our EMS listeners, viewers understand when you sit and we know you want to rush in, right?
yeah.
Everybody knows you want to rush in, but
Mhm.
you need to have municipalities a staging policy. And when you're told to stage, you stage. You are not police. You
Right.
maybe have a ballistic vest, but you sure as heck probably don't have a gun. You're not
Mhm.
tactical assault teams. So you stay
No, this
outside. You do
this is
what
a
you're told.
policy. Assuming that the fire department has a policy. I'm quite certain FDNY does, but the entity made a policy decision, and those types of policy decisions are most likely to carry immunity with them.
Of
So
course.
and that's probably why they're hitting the constitutional issue so hard because they're trying to go around tort immunity, and because they realize it's going to be a pretty tough hill to climb for negligence liability.
Right.
So,
This is the worst of the citizenry versus the fire and EMS services, right? Because it assumes a bias, it assumes we stayed outside, and the fact that the lawyer doesn't even ask the question, why do you think they staged outside, just shows they don't understand us. They don't understand our people, our world. They just don't. By the way, before I forget, we'll get to our next case. I just want to say, and you've seen the same thing out of Florida. I mean,
yeah,
just so grueling. I want to say, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Wear your chin strap. The death we had in the fire service this last couple days, very unfortunate. The captain from I don't know if he was
Miami-Dade, right? Yeah, Miami-Dade.
I think it
Bill?
was
Yeah.
Miami-Dade. Bill Gustin, what a freaking tribute. This guy honored his father every time he spoke. But he always said, wear his chin strap. And he's right, wear your chin strap on your helmet so your helmet doesn't get blown up. But man, if you've ever sat through his courses, 51 years in the fire service. I know this is totally off base, but it's not, because he modeled the fire service, right? That we want to go in, we want to rush in, but sometimes you can't. I'm sorry, fire I can fight, guns, not so much. So anyway, okay, so let's get to the last one. This is such a great week. So Chicago has won a disability discrimination suit, but I want to bring you back. This is such an important lesson for disability. About 4 weeks ago, Curt, I think it was, we reviewed a case. It could have been similar, but for one huge thing. In that case, the city, state, government, whatever it was, had somebody approach them with a disability, but they did not engage in the informal, it's not a formal, in the informal discussion or meeting about how to reasonably accommodate a disability. And so they lost. If you are approached by an employee who has a disability, you must have an at least informal discussion, and please document it, about, right? And Curt, this should be one of our upcoming policies. We should definitely do, but you must have a accommodation meeting, not a hearing, just a meeting. Here, however, we have an individual who suffered a stroke. He was a firefighter. He was on the promotion list to lieutenant. He was suffered a stroke, and so he couldn't move his left hand, left arm, left leg. With rehab, he did gain some motion, but he still could not perform the essential job performance requirements of the job. Now, let me stop there. If you do not have in writing essential job performance requirements of a firefighter, you will most likely lose this lawsuit. But they have one, and they engage in a reasonable accommodation informal meeting. But he was reassigned as part of the accommodation. He's reassigned to a non-firefighting, I think, airport or whatever job.
Yeah, he's doing logistics at the airport.
Logistics at the airport, an administrative job. But while he's at the job, he learns his number gets called for the lieutenant.
Well, that's like 7 years later. It's like 7 years later. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Okay.
Oh yeah, 7 years later, he I don't know. I don't know if they
14 to
test. I'm
21.
assuming they test.
Yep.
But then he becomes eligible for lieutenant, and he wants the promotion, but then he wants to go back to that billet. And here's the funny thing: at one time, that billet was a lieutenant spot, and then for various reasons, they eliminated the lieutenant spot. So when he went there and he worked there for 7 years, he did it as a firefighter.
Right. So the key here is twofold. One, that the city engaged in this discussion with him. The court makes a big point that they did that. Had they not done that, even if there was no accommodation they could make reasonably, they would have likely lost.
Right.
But here they have that accommodation meeting. In fact, it seems like there was a couple of them, but they couldn't accommodate him. So he sues saying, you didn't accommodate me. And the city just proved there's no position available to you to do that. And he wanted exception after exception after exception made for him. And the court says, there just wasn't one. So there's just no way to allow him to be, I think the court uses the term promoted in place. He couldn't
Yeah.
be promoted in place. You can't stay at the airport and be promoted to lieutenant if there's no change in your job duties.
Right. And they offered him that promotion into fire prevention, and then he really wasn't keen on going to fire prevention. He
And
wanted
that
to,
kills you
right,
because
and he
that's a
wanted to,
reason, right?
right. Yeah, he wanted to stay at the airport and just become a lieutenant, work as a lieutenant. And the court said that's the department doesn't have to do that. You could, if you wanted to be a lieutenant, you could have moved up and they had a position for you in fire prevention.
But he
And
couldn't go up the stairs.
well, that was one of the things, but apparently he didn't really, he didn't seriously entertain that. And they were looking at whether or not there was an elevator or some other means of getting
Right.
him around. So,
But as
but
a plaintiff, you're done, right? When somebody offers you a reasonable accommodation, you don't
right,
get, well, give me another. We've
yeah,
given you one. You only get one. I've had this case. You only get one. They don't have to come up with as many until you decide there's one you like. They only have to accommodate you, not and reasonably accommodate you, not give you whatever the heck you want. He
yeah.
was
I think this,
greedy.
yeah, I think there's a lot of firefighters, probably retired firefighters, who look at this case and go, my department didn't even have a position to put me in.
Right.
Right, right. And he was fortunate that they covered him. They covered, and they said, we will leave you at the airport. We're not going to force you to resign or retire. Many places, you particularly smaller departments, you would have been out.
I
So,
I had an issue where there was a rescue lieutenant position, and because it was rescue, it was exterior,
mm,
and the person couldn't go interior. But
mm,
in my case, many years ago, they could be exterior and they could have done the rescue lieutenant. But
mm.
the accommodation they asked for is, well, why don't you bump this interior qualified lieutenant out of his job to an interior qualified job, which he could
Oh yeah,
fulfill?
oh
And
yeah.
they,
That's yeah.
no,
That's
right? We're not,
reasonable. Yeah, that's a reasonable accommodation.
right. Just deprive someone else
Hey,
of their
make me
job.
the chief. You make me the chief, and then I can do that. I can just sit behind a desk and tell people what to do.
Right. But right. And the point of all this, viewers, is reasonable is one, reasonable, and two, you don't get two shots at the apple. It's not, we'll just keep coming up with them until you find something you like. All we have to do is offer you something that's reasonable to accommodate you, and that's the end.
Yeah,
It's a one and done as far as I read the law.
yeah.
No. Anyway, I have it. It is like,
Crazy.
even though you're not watching this probably live, but people are watching it, it's 10 at night. It is late. I'm
Yeah,
exhausted, been on plane with the worst turbulence I've ever experienced because we had all those storms. And I
yeah.
got to tell you, this one was so much fun. This is just crazy stuff. I don't know if you can say it on YouTube, but these
Yeah.
are great cases.
Yeah.
Great cases.
Very, very interesting week this past week. So, all right. Well, that'll do it for another edition of Fire Law Roundup. We got Brad's conference coming up in the week
A
after,
week,
right?
a week and a
Yeah.
couple
So,
days. Yep.
yeah. So looking forward to that.
And
And
and I won't headline it because I don't know how it's going to turn out. But I have a very big case tomorrow, not the constitutional one we're talking about, but I have a very
okay,
good court appearance in the far end of Long Island, which I got to be at. It's
long
going to
guy.
really set a big tone on what this court does with its.
Yeah.
I'll just
Do
hint
you
it's
think you'll get a
regarding to
decision
firefighter
tomorrow?
discipline.
Will you get a decision tomorrow that you can talk about next week, or is he just going to make your arguments tomorrow?
I suspect the judge is going to make a comment about where this is going,
Hmm.
but I'm not going to forecast it. So I don't think there'll be a written decision. I think there's going to be a comment, which I will then report on, certainly. But this is a big deal in New York State. I think everywhere because it's a constitutional issue
Hmm.
about attorney's fees. So it's
Oh
a
well,
it's a
now you got you
1988
got both
case.
you got both ears on me going here.
Yeah,
So
this is a big deal. But we'll talk about tomorrow, or I will cry on video. One or the other.
all
We'll see how it
all
turns
right,
out.
all right. That'll do it for another edition of Fire Law Roundup. We'll see you all next week, Brad. We'll see you next week, and I'll see you later on next week
In
in
person,
person.
so
All right,
excited.
all right.